The knock came just before dusk, a soft, splintered sound barely louder than the wind scraping along the shutters. Clara Evers paused with her hands deep in dough, listening. The storm was coming. She could smell it, earthy and sharp like wet stone. No one should be out in this weather, not this far from town. The knock came again. Firmer. A child cried. Clara wiped her hands on her apron, heart thumping in a quiet, even rhythm. She took the shotgun from the wall but didn't cock it, yet. Her boots were heavy on the floorboards as she moved to the door. Another cry, this one wet and desperate. A baby. She opened the door 3 inches. A man stood there, barely upright, wrapped in a soaked coat dark with travel and old blood. His left sleeve hung useless. In his arms, a small bundle squirmed, letting out a thin wail that went straight to the hollow beneath Clara's ribs. "Please," he said, voice cracked and hoarse. "Milk. My boy needs milk." Clara's eyes flicked down. The child was pale, lips dry and blue-tinged. He couldn't have been more than 6 months old. "I've got goats," she said cautiously. "He won't take it." The wind howled behind him, pushing against the door like a second visitor. Clara hesitated, then stepped back and opened it wider. "Come in." He crossed the threshold slowly, knees shaking. The warmth of the fire seemed to sap what little strength he had left, and he nearly collapsed onto the nearest chair. Clara shut the door, bolted it, then turned to get a closer look. The baby was shivering. His tiny fists opened and closed weakly against his father's chest. Clara's eyes moved over the man, sunken cheeks, stubbled jaw, a bruised temple, and a jagged gash beneath the collarbone. She put a pot of water on the stove, grabbed a jar of honey and a cloth. "What's your name?" He didn't answer. Clara knelt beside the baby, and gently took him from the man's arms. His body tensed, but he let go. "I'm not gonna hurt him," she murmured. "I know," the man rasped. "If I thought you would, I wouldn't be here." The baby nuzzled against Clara's chest, rooting instinctively. She stared down at him, throat tightening. Her body ached with a memory it had buried. She had known this weight before. The soft curve of a head against her heart, the hot press of a mouth that didn't know words but knew need. She took a breath. Goat's milk might as well have been chalk water. No time to argue with nature. No time to measure grief. She walked into the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and unbuttoned the top of her dress. Her milk hadn't fully dried. Not since the last child, the one who hadn't lived past 3 weeks. The doctor said it was rare but possible. Her body hadn't let go. Maybe it never would. The baby latched. Gulped. Sighed. Her eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. When she returned to the firelight, the man had passed out. Blood had soaked through the rough cloth he'd wrapped around his arm. She laid the baby in a basket beside the hearth, wrapped in warm flannel, then approached the man. She rolled up his sleeve, revealing a bullet graze gone raw and septic. "Fool," she muttered. "You'll be dead by morning if you're not careful." He stirred. "Ain't dead yet." "Close enough." She cleaned the wound with boiled water and crushed pine resin. He winced but didn't fight her. "What's his name?" The man blinked at her, eyes unreadable. "He ain't got one." Clara frowned. "You didn't name your own son?" He shrugged. "Figured if he didn't live, I wouldn't have to bury the name with him." She bit her tongue. What kind of man didn't name his child? And yet, there was no hatred in his voice. Just exhaustion. Just hurt. Clara stood, washed her hands in the basin, and checked the baby again. He was sleeping now, milk-drunk and pink-cheeked. She touched his fingers, impossibly small. "I lost 2," she said into the quiet. "Both before the first frost." The man didn't reply. "You're bleeding onto my floor," she added, glancing over. "I'll clean it." "You'll sleep, or you'll bleed out." He nodded once, eyes closing again. Outside, the wind turned shrill. A sudden thump made her stiffen, but it was only a branch against the roof. She barred the door, checked the rifle, then sat in her rocking chair beside the hearth. The baby snored softly. The man twitched in his sleep. In the flickering firelight, Clara studied his face. He wasn't what she'd feared. No drunken outlaw, no predator in disguise. Just a man past the edge of himself, carrying a child he hadn't dared name, asking a stranger for milk. The storm hit full just before midnight. Rain and hail lashed the windows. Clara sat through it, listening. She watched the baby breathe. She whispered prayers in a voice gone and used. At some point, she reached into the cedar chest beside her chair and pulled out a folded cloth, white lace, faded with time. A christening bonnet. She hadn't buried it with either child. She hadn't known why until now. She held it up to the firelight, then laid it gently beside the baby. When dawn crept in, gray and tired, Clara stood. The fire had burned low. The man was still sleeping. She picked up the baby, warm and heavy in her arms. "I think your name is Eli," she whispered. The man stirred then, as if hearing her from the edge of sleep. "What did you say?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked to the window and looked out at the brightening storm, at the world half drowned and washed new. There was no going back to the silence she'd chosen. The moment she'd taken the baby in her arms, fed him from her body, she'd crossed a line. Not out of pity. Not even out of grief. But because something in her knew, the child needed a mother. And maybe she needed a child to need her. Behind her, the man opened his eyes fully for the first time. Their eyes met. No words passed between them. But something did. And just like that, the cabin wasn't so quiet anymore. The storm had passed, but the air was still thick with leftover rain, and the sharp bite of cold. Clara stepped outside just long enough to empty the basin and check the coop. One hen was missing, probably spooked and flown off into the woods. She didn't worry about it. Her mind was still upstairs, with the child and the stranger now sleeping in her guest bed, the only clean linens she'd saved for years. Inside, the fire had gone to coals. Clara moved quietly, stirring embers, adding a log. The room warmed slowly. The baby stirred in the cradle she'd hastily fashioned from a drawer and wool. He fussed, kicked, then settled when he caught sight of her. His eyes were pale and trusting. That felt like a weight all its own. She fed him again without ceremony, her body aching but willing. He drank as though he knew this rhythm now, as though he had known it all along. When she turned, the man was awake, propped on his good arm, watching her with quiet intensity. "You fed him again." "He needed it." "You didn't have to." "No," she agreed. "I didn't." He looked away first. The shadows from the morning light drew tired lines down his face. He looked older now, stripped of desperation. Just a man at the edge of something he couldn't name. "I'm Clara," she offered, wiping the baby's mouth with the hem of her sleeve. "Isaiah." She nodded once, then set the baby down gently and crossed the room to him. "You've got a fever." "I noticed." She pressed a hand to his forehead, then his cheek. His skin was hot, flushed. Infection had taken hold. "I can treat it," she said, more to herself than him. "But it's gonna hurt." He didn't flinch. "I've hurt worse." Clara retrieved her small tin of wild mustard poultice, and a strip of clean linen. She worked in silence, unwinding the cloth she'd wrapped the night before. The wound was angry and red, already weeping. She bit the inside of her cheek, focused on the task. He hissed once when she applied the salve but didn't move. "Where were you headed?" she asked quietly. "Nowhere." She raised an eyebrow. "That's a long way to walk with a baby in your arms." Isaiah looked down at the floor. "I wasn't supposed to have him with me." Clara kept her hands moving. "His mother." He was quiet a moment. Then, "Dead." "How?" "Smallpox." Clara paused. "When?" 4 months ago." Her gaze drifted to the baby, Eli, as she'd called him. Healthy. No signs of sickness. She breathed a little easier. "I worked cattle mostly," Isaiah went on. "Wasn't home when she got sick. She wrote me a letter, but I got there too late. Buried her myself. Took the boy. Been moving ever since." "Why?" He didn't answer right away. "Some men think I owe them." "Do you?" Another pause. "I borrowed from them. Thought I could pay it back come spring, but the rains ruined the grazing. Boss let half of us go. I walked out with nothing but him. Clara studied him. His jaw clenched, not in anger, but in shame. She recognized it. She'd worn that same expression for years after her first child slipped away in the cradle, while she was out splitting wood. I'm not looking for pity, he added. Good, she replied. Because I don't have any left. Isaiah gave a humorless chuckle. Fair enough. The baby stirred, whimpering again. Clara scooped him up with practiced ease, checked his swaddling, and rocked him gently as she moved toward the fire. You're good with him. I wasn't at first, she said. But grief teaches you strange things. Isaiah sat upright with effort. You lost one. Two. He looked away again. I don't tell you for sympathy, she said. Just so you know I understand the ache. Isaiah's hands balled into fists. I don't even know what to call him. Ain't that something? I've held him through snow, through hunger, but I still don't know what name would stick. Everyone I think of feels too big. Clara tilted her head, considering. Names are promises. Maybe you're not ready to make one yet. The fire crackled. The baby cooed softly, then yawned, his whole face scrunching up like an old man's. Clara smiled faintly. I called him Eli. Just in my head. Isaiah looked over sharply. Don't worry, she added. It's just until you find the right one. His mouth opened like he might object, but then he nodded once. Eli, he repeated under his breath. That's good. Later, while the baby slept, Isaiah helped her stack firewood, his movements stiff but determined. Clara let him. He needed to move, to work, to feel useful. She understood that too. They didn't talk much. A few glances. A few quiet gestures. At one point, Clara handed him a coat her father had left behind. It was worn but warm. He accepted it without a word, pulling it on like it meant more than he'd admit. That night, a sound outside made Clara reach instinctively for the rifle. Isaiah did the same. The baby didn't stir, but the air was too still. Wait, she whispered. They listened. A low shuffle, not human, not quite animal either. The dog outside didn't bark. That was worse. Clara opened the door just a crack and peered out. A shape stood in the trees, tall and unmoving. It didn't step forward. Didn't speak. A man maybe. Draped in animal hide, face obscured by shadow and distance. Isaiah stepped up beside her. Friend of yours? No, Clara said. But he's not an enemy either. She closed the door gently and bolted it again. Who was that? She didn't answer right away. He's come before when winter's bad. Leaves food. Sometimes hides. Never speaks. Isaiah frowned. Why help you? I think, he knew my brother. They fought in the war. Both lived, though neither came back the same. The next morning, Clara found a bundle wrapped in hide on the porch. Dried meat. Smoked fish. Enough to last a week. A small clay jar of herbs for fever. No tracks. No signature. Just silence. She brought it inside without comment. Isaiah stared at it, then looked at her. That's not nothing. No, she agreed. It's something. She crushed a few of the herbs and added them to hot water. The smell filled the room, bitter and piney. She handed the mug to Isaiah, who drank without flinching. Later, after the baby had eaten and slept again, Clara stood at the door with her shawl tight across her chest. She watched the sky. A change was coming. She could feel it in her knees, in the way the birds had gone quiet. Inside, Isaiah was humming something low and tuneless as he rocked the cradle. Clara turned to watch him. I've never seen him so still, he whispered. You gave him everything you could, she said softly. Now he's safe. Isaiah didn't look at her. His hand hovered over the cradle, trembling. I don't know how to be a father, he said. You're learning. He looked up then. His eyes met hers with something almost like belief. Outside, the wind began to rise again. Inside, the fire burned steady. Clara didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight there was this, the rhythm of breath, the hum of warmth, and the fragile promise of a name. The baby woke crying just before dawn, his tiny body flushed with heat, breath hitching like his lungs were too small for the air he needed. Clara's hand flew to his forehead and felt the truth instantly. He was burning up. She rocked him, whispered his name, and reached for the cool cloths, but they did little. His cries turned hoarse. Every time she thought he might quiet, he let out another ragged sob. Isaiah was already pulling on his boots before she turned around. "We have to get him help," she said. "There ain't any help out here," he muttered. "There's medicine. Somewhere." Her voice cracked. He shook his head. "Town's 3 days off. No horse would make it. I'm not going to sit here and watch him die." Isaiah looked at her and for a second, something collapsed in his face. Fear, failure, the kind of terror that turns strong men small. "Clara," he said, "I don't know what to do." She was already wrapping the baby in furs, her movements swift and exact. "You're going to stay here. Keep the fire fed." "I'm going." "You don't even know where." "I do," she said. "I know who left that jar. And if he left that, he has more." Isaiah stared at her like she was speaking in tongues. "Chayton," she said. "The one from the woods." He stepped forward, voice low. "You said he doesn't come when called." "I'm not calling," Clara said. "I'm going to find him." She saddled her old mare before the sun had cleared the trees, threw on the thick coat and wool gloves, and rode hard into the woods with only a flask of tea and the memory of old paths. The cold cut through her like knives, the sky a bruised gray. She whispered prayers she hadn't said in years. Her hands ached, but she didn't stop. Somewhere behind her, a baby cried. She rode faster. After an hour, she dismounted, tied the mare to a tree, and continued on foot. The forest here grew dense, the trail thinning into deer tracks. She moved through branches like she'd been born here. Her feet knew what her mind didn't remember. Then, in a clearing he stood. Chayton was exactly as she remembered. Taller than most, wrapped in elk hide and silence. His face unreadable, eyes ancient and still. He didn't move when she stepped into view. He didn't need to. Clara knelt in the frost. "My son is dying," she said. "You helped before. I need more." Chayton said nothing for a long while. Then, wordless, he reached into his satchel and pulled out a small wrapped bundle. He handed it to her, eyes never leaving hers. She clutched it like it was the last light in a dark world. "Thank you." Chayton raised 2 fingers and pointed south. A warning. Clara nodded. "I'll be ready." She rode back harder than she came, the medicine clutched to her chest. When she burst through the cabin door, Isaiah jumped from the hearth. The baby was gasping, lips blue. "Give him here," Clara said. Isaiah handed him over, trembling. She crushed the herbs, boiled them fast, then dropped tiny doses down the baby's throat with a soaked rag. Every breath after was a battle. Every second stretched. She whispered his name over and over. Eli, 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 as if saying it enough could anchor him to this world. For hours they sat, rocking and waiting. Then, as twilight painted the window pink and ash, the baby let out a clear, strong cry. Isaiah choked. "He's breathing better." Clara smiled with the kind of relief that breaks something inside. "He's fighting." The baby fell asleep not long after, his fever broken, cheeks returning to color. Isaiah didn't sit. He paced, every few minutes checking the window, then the door, then the child again. "What are you looking for?" Clara asked. "I don't know," he muttered. "A reckoning." And it came at dusk. The horses arrived first, 3 of them, dark shapes against the red sky. 3 men, thick with coats and guns and the kind of anger that doesn't burn out. Isaiah froze when he saw them through the window. "They followed me," he said. Clara was already moving. She lifted the rifle from above the mantel. "How many?" "3. Maybe more out back." Clara lit the lanterns. "Light makes us look stronger." Isaiah stared at her. "You don't have to do this." "You brought your child to my doorstep," she said. "That makes him mine too. And I don't let mine get taken." Outside, The men called out. Isaiah Burke. You in there? Clara stepped to the door. He is. But this land is mine. And you're not welcome on it. The leader laughed, a cruel sound. Lady, we don't deal with settlers. We came for our money. Then you're wasting your trip. He's got none. We'll take the horse then. Maybe the child. Isaiah's voice was steel behind her. You touch him and I'll bury you with your boots off. A pause. Then a cocked rifle outside. Then footsteps, slow, deliberate. And then the whistle. A high-pitched sound that cut through the air like a hawk's cry. The men stopped. Another figure stepped into the open. Chayton. Bow in hand, arrow nocked. He didn't speak, but he didn't have to. The way he stood said everything. The leader spat. You bringing savages now, Isaiah? Clara stepped onto the porch. Leave now and you walk. Stay and you bleed. The man cursed under his breath, but he wasn't stupid. He looked from the woman, to the man behind her, to the shadow in the trees who hadn't missed a shot since he was 9. Then he turned his horse. This ain't finished, he growled. It is, Clara said. When they were gone, Isaiah collapsed into the chair, breathing like he'd just run across Kansas. Clara set the rifle down gently. He won't come back, she said. Not with that kind of coward in his bones. Isaiah watched her. You didn't have to stand with me. You didn't have to knock on my door. The fire popped. He needs a name, she said, nodding toward the baby. One that means something. Isaiah swallowed. Eli, he whispered. If you don't mind. Clara smiled. Not at all. Days passed. The snow melted at the edges. The fever didn't return. Isaiah fixed the fence. Clara taught him how to smoke meat properly. Eli laughed for the first time. Clara froze when she heard it, her hand trembling on the washtub. Then she laughed too. That night, she sat by the fire, baby in her lap. Isaiah placed a carved toy horse on the table. You made this? I had help, he said, nodding toward the woods. Clara looked out the window, half expecting a shadow to wave. But there was nothing now. Just trees. Still and endless. Isaiah sat beside her. I've got nothing to offer you, he said. No land. No legacy. Clara looked down at Eli, nestled in her arms. You brought me him, she said. That's everything. They sat in silence, the fire crackling, the wind howling through the trees. And in the center of it all, a child breathing steady, a man learning stillness, and a woman who had chosen, again, to open her door. Not because she was lonely, but because someone had knocked. The spring thaw came late that year. Ice clung stubbornly to the creek bed, and the morning still held a frost sharp enough to cut through bone. But there were signs, tiny green buds on the willow, robins skimming low across the wet grass. And Eli, stronger now, sat up in the cradle Clara had lined with wool and feathers, his bright eyes tracking every shadow across the walls. Isaiah mended the fence at dawn, and carved toys by firelight. He didn't say much, but the weight he carried when he first arrived had lightened. It showed in the way he moved and how he laughed, not loud or often but real. He started calling Clara's cabin home, though not always out loud. Mostly, he said it when he brought in kindling, or swept the stoop, or fixed the hinge on the pantry door without being asked. Clara didn't ask him to stay, and he didn't offer. But each morning he was still there, and that counted for something. The days ran together with a quiet rhythm. Tending chickens, splitting logs, boiling stew, rocking Eli. The silence between them grew less out of necessity and more like comfort. Two people who didn't need to fill every space with words. One morning, Clara rose before the sun and found Isaiah already awake, sitting beside Eli, who giggled and reached for his father's face with sticky fingers. He's teething, Isaiah said softly. Bit me hard enough to make me bleed. Clara smiled as she poured water into the basin. He's trying to tell you he likes you. Isaiah looked up, eyes tired but full. I never thought I'd see him smile like that. You didn't think you'd see him live, she said gently. Isaiah nodded. I still don't know why you did it. Why you took him in. Clara didn't answer right away. She dipped the cloth and wrung it out before speaking. I buried 2 children in 3 years. One to fever, one in his sleep. My body remembered what my mind tried to forget. When you walked in that night, holding him like a question, I think I already knew the answer. Isaiah's throat worked, but he didn't speak. He just reached out and touched her hand briefly, just enough to say what he couldn't say aloud. Later that afternoon, a rider appeared on the horizon. He didn't come fast, but with the kind of purpose that made Clara's stomach twist. Isaiah saw him too, and reached for the rifle without thinking. When the man drew close, he dismounted with a weary grunt. Middle-aged, dressed in a coat better suited to lawyers than horsemen. His face was sun-beaten, but his hands were clean. I'm looking for Isaiah Burke, he said. Clara stepped forward. Who wants him? The man nodded politely. James Harlan. I'm with the collector's office in Junction Point. I've been sent to resolve a debt. Isaiah stepped onto the porch slowly. It's me. Harlan tilted his head. You've got 2 options. Pay what's owed or surrender the collateral. I don't have the money. Then the horse, the wagon. Isaiah spread his arms. I ain't got any of that either. The man looked at Clara. And the woman? She yours? Clara's eyes narrowed. I'm nobody's. But this land's mine. And you'll do well to remember that before you think to speak again. Harlan's face colored. Then perhaps you can help him if you're so inclined. I already have, she said. More than you ever will. Eli started to cry. Clara didn't move to hush him. She let the sound carry across the yard like a battle cry. Harlan sighed. Look. The men who want this settled, well, they're not patient. They'll come themselves and they won't knock. Clara stepped down from the porch, slow and sure. Then tell them this. If they set 1 foot on my land, I'll plant them in it. Harlan studied her, something flickering in his expression. Maybe doubt, maybe fear. He nodded once, mounted, and rode off without another word. Isaiah watched him go, his shoulders slumping. He's right, he said. They'll come. Let them, Clara answered. We've faced worse. But that night, Isaiah packed. Clara found him rolling a bedroll in the barn, quietly, like a man sneaking away from his own life. You think leaving will protect us? She asked. I think they won't stop. Not until they've got blood or coin. And you think I'd let them have either? Isaiah faced her, eyes hollow. I brought danger to your door. You brought a child. You brought him back from the edge. You stayed when you didn't have to. I don't have a name, he said. Not one worth giving him. Clara stepped forward, voice sharp. That boy has a name now. He has a home. And he has a father. Whether you feel worthy or not. Isaiah's hands clenched. I've done bad things. Before this. Things I can't undo. So have I, she said. You think I don't carry ghosts? He shook his head. You're good. I'm trying, she corrected. Same as you. Isaiah turned away, hands gripping the beam above him. I don't want to lose this. Then don't. He didn't move for a long time. In the end, he stayed. A week passed, then another. No riders came. No more threats. Just spring, unfurling slow and green and stubborn as always. One quiet morning, Isaiah brought a box to the table. Inside was a small band of gold, bent at the edges. It was hers, he said. My first wife. Clara stared at it, then at him. I know we don't have papers. Or promises. But if you'll have me. She picked up the ring, held it in her palm for a long time. Then she set it down gently. You already live here. You already belong. A ring won't change what you've earned. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He reached for her hand, and she let him hold it. Eli cooed from his blanket by the hearth. The fire snapped once, like applause. Outside, the creek ran cold and clear. The sky was full of birds returning home. Inside, a woman who'd lost too much and a man who'd run too far stood still long enough to claim what remained. Not because they had to, but because something stronger than fear had grown between them. Something with roots. Something that looked, finally, like family.